Hey folks, in this video we're going to be continuing looking at our numerical expressions and using GermDOS, if you will. In elementary school it was PEMDAS, and now we've got a few new things that we've added in there. But we're going to focus specifically today on just the exponents piece of this. We're going to talk about the difference between when we should have a positive answer and when we might have a negative answer. So first, let's just take a look at this first problem. And remember, according to GermDOS, if there is any grouping symbols, if there's nothing to do inside of that, that just means multiplication, so we're going to deal with this later. So we took care of the grouping symbols. Now let's take a look at the exponents or the radicals, whichever we see from left to right. So right here, we see an exponent, and you guys know that 3 squared is a 9. And everything else is going to just get copied down. So go ahead and just be doing this with me. And you're going to see where I'm going with this when it comes to the exponent stuff. And see how I have this minus sign in the problem? I'm just going to continue to bring that down. All right, now the next thing we would do is this multiplication step, taking 1/4 of 20. If the fraction is ever something that you don't like if it's a weird fraction, you could just make it a decimal and do that times the number in the calculator. So for example, this would be a 0.25 times 20. But you guys know that 1/4 of 20 is just a straight up 5, so we're good with that. And then I'm going to write down the -2 and then the -9. Then we have 5 minus 2 is 3. And then 3 minus 9. For this problem, we're going to get a -6. And I'm going to put that answer here in purple. All right? So for the first one, when we did all this math, we get a -6. And now right below it, what I want to point out is that I want to focus just on this piece of it, okay? If all of this was gone, do you guys see that if we just cared about this part, that it actually is the -9, the -9, the -9? So when you guys see a problem like this, it's not saying -3 is the number that is getting squared. It's saying subtract whatever 3 squared is. So you'd be subtracting a 9. All right? So if you guys see something like this without parentheses, it's not telling you to take a -3 and multiply a -3 by itself. It's telling you to take away 3 squared. The thing I just said that you might think would be a +9 is if you saw a -3 in parentheses getting squared, which means now you have a negative number times a negative number, and this is what you guys are thinking of when you think of -3 squared being a +9. So we'll see that in a second, okay? All right, let's take a look at another problem here. So using GermDOS, we've got 16 plus 5 minus 2 cubed. I have no grouping symbols. We're going to go straight to the exponent, and 2 cubed is an 8. And I'm just going to write everything else down in black that I see. So 16 plus 5, and then minus whatever 2 cubed is, which is 8. Now 16 plus 5, you guys know, is 21. And then 21 minus 8 here, that's going to be a 13. All right, so if we were focusing just on this part, it's saying minus whatever 2 cubed is, so take away 8. So on its own, that would be a -8. So if you see something like this, again, notice there's no parentheses. Your answer is going to be negative because it's telling you, like, take away whatever this is. So take away 8. And if it's not in a problem, it's going to look like a negative on its own. So negative numbers look like subtraction in the order of operations problems. Now for the last one, do you guys see that the exponent is outside of the base in parentheses? Here you actually have a base, a -5 times a -5, and that is going to give you a +25. When you see the exponent outside of a number in parentheses, it's telling you to multiply that number by itself, which is going to give you a positive. And then now I'm just going to keep that answer in parentheses to continue to show the multiplication of times 3 right next to it. So this is going to be a 75 for our overall final answer. That's a 75. And then down here, I'm going to highlight the thing that is probably what you're thinking of from elementary school when you're dealing with exponents. This is when you're going to have a negative number times a negative number, and that, folks, is when you get a positive answer. That's going to be the +25. Okay? So now that you guys already watched your video on the order of operations, it's, I think, a little bit easier to understand when you see the minus sign and then something with the exponent, how that's like a negative number on its own, or again, subtraction in the problem, versus what you might be remembering from elementary school when you square a negative number and that's when you get a positive answer. So let's take a look at just a bunch of examples down here, and you can see I've already got a lot of the stuff written out for us. This is something in exponential form because we have an exponent. And just so you guys know, the word I just said was exponential form. So I'm giving you the problems in exponential form, okay? And then I wrote them out for you in something called expanded form. Whoops. And we're going to just simplify and get a final answer in that last blank, okay? So in exponential form, if you see parentheses, that means you do a negative number in parentheses times itself, and this is when we're going to get a positive 16. Now for the next one, because we don't see parentheses, this is telling us to take away 3 squared. So take away whatever 3 times 3 is. So 3 times 3 is 9, and if we take away 9, it's going to look like this, a negative 9. Now the next one, because we have parentheses again, it's telling us to do a negative 3 in parentheses times itself 3 times, because this time our exponent is a 3. Now look what happens when we do this, y'all. A lot of people end up getting this wrong. So the first two, this negative 3 times negative 3, that's a positive 9. But now this positive 9 times the negative 3 again is a negative 27. So just be careful with problems like this. You have to just straight up do the math. And I'm going to come back to problems like this towards the end of the video when we see that it is in parentheses and it has an exponent. And we're going to talk about the difference between an odd exponent and an even exponent, okay? All right, now for the next one, let me fix that in the video. So this one, it shouldn't be 4s here. Let's see. It's a group, so let me just ungroup that real quick. And now I can delete this. Boom, there we go. That's what I needed. I just need to fix that 4s. Those should say 5s. So we're going to subtract whatever 5 times 5 is. So we're going to subtract 25. Sorry about that. That's fixed. So yeah, this one would be a negative 25. Okay. All right, now the next column. So in parentheses, it's negative 16 times itself twice. Negative 16 is getting squared. And you guys know that 16 squared is 256. And a negative times a negative is a positive. All right, so 17 squared is 289. And we're going to take away 17 squared. So this is going to be negative 289. All right, now for this one, we have negative 2 to the 5th power. And this right here, this negative 2 times negative 2 is a 4. And then this negative 2 times negative 2 is also a 4. So really I've got 4. I'm going to put it off to the side. I've got a 4 times a 4, 4 times 4, and then times a negative 2. So this is a 16. All of this is a 16. And now that 16 times this negative 2 is a negative 32. So that right there probably already kind of gives you that hint that if it were a negative 2 to the 4th power, see how that would be a positive 16? But then because there's another one, I have an odd exponent, it's going to go back to being a negative answer. So let me actually take this problem. Now's probably a good time. Let me just copy and paste that and make a new page here. Let's see what happens if it was just the first two. So this would be a negative 2 getting squared, which has an even exponent, okay? Sorry, it's freezing. We'll just let it go. There we go. All right, so let me erase that. Ooh. Cool. Negative 2 squared. I think you guys are easily going to see where I'm going with this. So when you see an even exponent here, that's going to be a positive number. But then the moment you see another one of these, whoops, now it's going to be a negative answer. Okay, because this is the positive 4, but now that is going to be times a negative 2, so now we have a negative 8. So it just depends here. This would be a positive answer. Now times negative 2, it's going to be negative again. If you have 4 of these, so negative 2 to the 4th, that's going to be back to positive answer. That's going to be a positive 16. And then when you do negative 2 to the 5th, now that's going to be back to that negative answer we just got, negative 32. So that just kind of alternates when they're in parentheses, and it really just depends on if you have an odd or an even exponent. All right, we're almost done here. And this one says take away 4 cubed. So you're going to take away 4 times 4 is 16. Times 4 again is actually a 64. So you're going to take away 64. What happens here, y'all, a lot of times is people get the 4 times 4 and they get a 16, and then they think times 3 and tell me 48. Just want to throw that out there. That's a really common mistake that I see there. And the last one's really easy. 1 times itself, so you're just going to take away 1 to the 4th power, so just take away 1. And now let's just review it again, seeing it in action, that when the number is in parentheses, that's going to be the negative 4 times negative 4, which is a positive 16. So that's going to happen first here. And then you've got times 2. So this answer would be a 32. Now, if you saw 100 minus 7 squared, you're going to do 100 minus whatever the answer to 7 squared is, which is 49. So again, that minus 7 squared, there's that minus 49. And this would be a 51. Again, let me put this kind of in green here now so that that part kind of stands out. That's the minus the 49. All right, now for this one, this thing here in purple, we already got the answer up here. We said that that thing was a negative 32, so that's that answer. And then out in front of it, I had 10 minus. And you guys know that minusing a negative is really like adding. So this becomes 10 plus 32. Which is a 42. All right, now inside my grouping symbols here, I get a negative 3. And then that answer has to get cubed. So that one we already did, it's up here. So we know that this one is going to be a negative 27. And then down here, if you saw negative 11 minus 1 to the 4th power, it's saying negative 11 minus 1. Which is negative 12. And again, I'll highlight it so that it can kind of stand out. This is that minus 1 to the 4th power that we said was a minus 1. And so when you see the minus 1 to the 4th power, there it is in action, the minus the 1 part. And just be really careful here. I want to go back to like this question about when we switch that double negative. Let's just review the one that I did switch it right here. This answer was a negative 32. And in case you can't remember, it was that math right there. That was the negative 32. So for this part, negative 2 to the 5th power is a negative number. And then when you see the 10 minus out in front of it, that's when it turned into 10 plus 32. And that's when we got the 42 up above. Okay? So this answer is a 42. Now let's take a look at the next one. So see how we have an even exponent? That negative 2 to the 4th power, we already mentioned on the other page. That's a positive 16 because you've got this 4 times this 4, and 4 times 4 is 16. So we know that that's a positive answer right there. That's a 16. So this thing in green is a 16. It's not a negative number like this one. It's positive. And then I have 10 minus out in front of it. Now I'm just going to do 10 minus 16 and get a negative 6. I don't have to do any switching of a double negative. So just be careful. It depends on if you have an odd or an even exponent here to mean if you're going to have a positive or a negative answer. And when you take away a negative, you do got to switch that to positive. And that concludes our video on how to simplify expressions focusing on just the exponents. Thank you for watching.